Okay, let's talk about the 7 key principles that form the foundation at Hope4Cancer. The first one is non-toxic cancer therapies.
Well, the point of having these therapies is to have therapies that are not going to cause additional harm, not cause an additional burden or challenge out of the body to the point of being more debilitated, where then we can end up having a bigger problem. Some of the therapies that we have would be intravenous, for example, high-dose vitamin C. We have the poly-MBA, Laetrile, or well known as B17. Therapies like photodynamic therapy, which is a light-based form of therapy. Sonodynamic therapy, which is more of a sound wave-based form of therapy. Heat therapies like the hyperthermia.
Also have effect on cancer cells. Right?
They also have an effect on cancer cells. Other therapies that we have, ozone therapies, ultraviolet radiation therapy, PMF, which stands for pulse electromagnetic field therapy. So, different kind of therapies that are focused on addressing a certain mechanism that can help the body to get to an optimal state of health versus, getting an additional challenge.
So Lisa, within the non-toxic cancer therapies, when you started them at the clinic and then you segued into doing them at home, what were some of the ones that you did at home, and how was the practicality of doing it at home for you?
The ones I did at home, I did sonophotodynamic therapy. So I took that home with me, doing heat lamp and then the sono machine, and then I also had the photolumen laser pads that I did at home. And then vitamin C, I switched to an oral form of it and kept that up at home.
Okay. Well, let's talk about detoxification, how so important that is for us. And it's important to detox our negative thoughts. I often say a negative thought can kill you faster than a bad germ. Detoxing the mouth, so all of our patients go to the biological or holistic dentist to look at metal fillings, cavitation, root canal, periodontal infections and disease that's so common now. Some of the studies say that 60 to 70% of the population have periodontal disease or infections that are hidden, but they are tapping the immune system and creating an environment for disease to set in. Another form of detoxification, of course, is the coffee enemas, which have been around for so long. It protects toxins and it helps eliminate the release of toxins from the liver and the gallbladder principally, and some mild cleansing of the lower colon, right? So coffee enemas are very important and something that you took home as well. Is that correct, Lisa?
That's right.
To continue doing them.
It's my habit.
Yeah, so how was it? Was it pretty cool to continue doing the coffee enemas at home?
Yes, coffee enemas. I also, we have a sauna, infrared sauna. And then what we jokingly call the pizza oven, the hyperthermia machine. We have that. And kids will say, Mom, are you going in the pizza oven? Mm-hmm. Yep, be out in 45 minutes. It's what they know.
So different ways of detoxing. And then the third key principle, restoring the microbiome. So how important is that, Dr. Cudillo?
Well, it's tremendously important for example, our immune system. The assimilation of nutrients, the kind of ecosystem or environment that we're going to have in our digestive tract. If that's not in good shape, it's going to be pretty difficult that we have optimal health. How do we do it? Well, detoxification is part of it. We have to clean our diet to begin with. We have to have an intake of nutrients that are healthy and not causing irritation in the digestive tract or inflammation or the accumulation of undigested food that just gets to a point of putrefaction, and then we just even bacteria start forming there, and parasites and things like that. So,
and segueing into this also is most cancer patients have subacute infections such as Epstein-Barr virus, maybe cytomegalovirus and other pathogens, parasitic infections, H. pylori. So within the restoring the microbiome, and we see how these 7 key principles intermingle. We do ultraviolet blood irradiation, right, to get rid of some of these pathogens that are associated with the onset of cancer, maybe even with the progression. Or when a patient is stuck in getting better in their treatment, it's because maybe they have parasitic infections or viruses, bacteria that is just dormantly not visible in blood tests or scans, of course, but are foundational in causing the progression of disease. So you started to mention the immune system, and immunomodulation is another of the key principles. And then you talked nutrition. Nutrition is another of the key principle. How was the nutrition aspect for you at the clinic and then when you went home, Lisa?
I was really surprised by actually the diversity at the clinic that was allowed. I think in the beginning you get stuck on what's allowed and not allowed, and it kind of puts you into a fearful mode about what you're going to eat. And it was beautiful, artistic, it tasted good, and it inspired our family to go home and continue that and look into more herbs that we had never used before. And it was really a path of freedom.
So you could eat healthy and it could be
enjoy
delicious.
it.
And
You could
enjoy
actually
it,
like your food.
Right.
And people see it as, Lisa, isn't that so limiting? And I think, no. We use more herbs and spices than most families that would consider their diet to be more diverse than ours.
Right.
You know.
And with respect to another hallmark or characteristic of cancer, which is hypoxia or low oxygen level, oxygenation is our other key principle. What are some of the therapies at the clinic, Dr. Correal, that we use for oxygenation?
Well, basically, we have 2 important ones. One would be ozone therapies, which that can be administered through rectal form, or they can be administered through blood form, being combined with blood. And the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, which is a form of increasing oxygen under a certain kind of atmosphere pressure while you're inside, so that oxygen molecules can be smaller and penetrate with a more effective way into the body. We know that one of the problems that has been theorized about cancer cells is a low oxygen state called hypoxia. So that's one of the reasons why oxygenation will be important. Another reason is one of the most important, well, all the parts of the cell are important, but one of the most important would be the mitochondria, and what the mitochondria needs is oxygen. If we think about the cell's process of apoptosis, which is when the cell knows that it needs to die in order for a new one to come, that's a process that is affected with cancer cells. So we can have more proper functioning mitochondria protecting the cells that are healthy through proper oxygenation. We can have that process also to be in optimal state.
So oxygenation at a cell level, tissue level, organ level, and then systemically.
Brain.
Systemically makes everything, all the therapies, nutrition, everything have maximum benefit in the healing process.
Yes, it's like when you're doing exercise. I mean, you'll have your most full potential when you're able to have the highest amount of oxygen available. I mean, you can be able to go into a state of anaerobic state where you're lacking oxygen, but that's when you start noticing you're not able to perform as to your optimal level. So if we bring that comparison to physiology in general, our bodies are just going to be in much more healthier state. Even our immune system, which is brings us to the key principle of immune modulation. What could you say to us, Dr. Tony, regarding that?
Immune modulation is that's why it's one of the key principles, is because the immune system, the God-given immune system, protects us from a cold to cancer and everything in between. So having an optimal immune system is very important. But now we know even more. Now we know that it's not only about having a good immune system, it's about having an immune system that can recognize the cancer cells. Because what we know now in medicine and oncology is that cancer cells have like a receptor site where it hides or shields themselves from being seen by the immune system. And so now at Hope4Cancer, we have therapies like Sunivera and even nutrition, Sunivera, nutrition, our soda, which is our antigen antibody vaccine. And when I say vaccine, we're not talking about, pathogenic vaccines. We're talking about substances that come from your own body in the form of antigens like the PSA, CA, 125. These are antigens that we extract from the urine, and then we're able to produce a vaccine that will give information to the antibodies so that they can detect the cancer cells more readily. So the immune system has to be in regulation or balance, because having a hyperactive immune system is as bad as having a hypoactive immune system. So someone that is having treatments for cancer, we need to have a highly regulated immune system and one that can detect the cancer cells.
What would be like fundamental things that all of us should be doing in order to prepare the terrain?
And that's where the 7 key principles all come in, because to have a good immune system, we have to lower toxic burden.
Yeah.
Right? With a high toxic burden, the immune system is confused. It doesn't know exactly, able to detect the cancer cells. Nutrition is fundamentally important. As we know, in the gut, that's where most of our immune defense is. So microbiome, yeah. So we need to have adequate nutrient intake, and it's hard to heal from anything, and for sure cancer, if we don't have the resources and the nutrients to heal. And then we talk about also oxygenation, which you just mentioned, is so important in the immune system. And then, of course, a favorite topic of all of us is the emotional spiritual, right? We can see the connection of the immune system and the emotional spiritual aspect, because as we know, Dr. Correa, from studies, patients that are depressed have a low immune system, and an immune system that is not as active. And so for you, Lisa, the emotional spiritual was so important, and something that you had to focus on, because this was not something that you were aware of. Like, how could the emotional spiritual help me in my situation with cancer? Would you like to share with us some of the features there, or some of the change in mindset that had to happen?
There's a proverb that says a heart at peace gives life to the body. And a body that is not in a place of peace cannot be a place of healing. And for me to be taught when I was there at the appointments that I had with Dr. Curiel, that what I think matters, and to take time to surrender my fears and my control, and to accept it as a change in lifestyle. And this is why I think that that's the most important of the 7 principles. They all work together, but the take home for me when I left Hope4Cancer, the number one most important thing was the emotional and spiritual. Knowing that when I entered into Hope4Cancer for my 3-week program, it wasn't like you're gonna enter in and then all of a sudden everything, wrap it up, put a bow on it, send it home, I'm done with cancer. The emotional spiritual component was the foundation for everything. So when I was leaving and thinking about what am I gonna do at home and what was important, I could not lose sight of the emotional spiritual component. Getting messages, I get messages at least every few days. Somebody else was diagnosed with cancer. The devastation that comes across when somebody talks to me and feels they have no options, that's the emotional spiritual. When you're sitting and listening to any human being telling you, there's nothing we can do for you, or this is the only option, your mind has now received that information and you're on the path to despair. But at Hope4Cancer, it was different. We learned that there could be change, and to not let what you couldn't do stop you from doing what you could do. Because it's really easy, even as I'm sitting here listening to you give the 7 principles and all the wonderful information. If your emotional spiritual component is not in place, it can be overwhelming instead of helpful. But if the emotional, spiritual component is in place, you take the truth of all of the other principles and they come to life without intimidating you. They're tools for you. And that transitioning from being there for 3 weeks to being at home, knowing that what I think matters, taking time to breathe. There are times, even when you're a patient at Hope4Cancer, that the most important treatment for me was actually to go for a walk on the ocean and to reset. And think of it like a sponge, and you're getting all this information, and you're having all these treatments, and then you get soaked and saturated, and the sunshine dries you out, helps you be able to receive more. So I would go, time it in between IVs, and I would literally tell the nurses, I'm going to the beach for my treatment. I'll be back in 30 minutes. And it trained me after 4 weeks of that. The same thing at home. The trigger is if you feel overwhelmed, if you feel fear, if you're discouraged. That's the principle that you go back to, the emotional and the spiritual. To remember why you're doing what you did, that it was the path that you were called on. These treatments are not harming you. So don't let your emotions and your thoughts harm you either. To keep your body in a healing place is to be surrendered, at peace, and not trying to control things. All the other things are actions. Sure, take a supplement. Do your pizza oven. But being at a place of healing emotionally, that's how all of those are effective. And that's why I can wake up every day and be excited about the day, because I am on a path to life.
Well, Lisa, that was very well said. So we're living to live.
Amen.
Contrary to what statistics say or what you've been told. What a beautiful feeling. That's how God intended us to be happy, to have health, and to live a long life, right? And I know, Dr. Curiel, you teach the patients some tools in emotional, spiritual well-being. Just briefly, can you name a few of the tools so that if you forgot them, Lisa, remind you.
It's a little bit difficult to generalize this component like a structure, like a to-do list, because every person is unique. First of all, we need to understand that an emotion is a problem when it becomes biological. And what do I mean by that? You can have certain things that will stress you out that don't have a long-term permanent effect on you, okay? But if there's a problem, like let's say your family is falling apart, and that's the worst thing that can happen to you, it will create a form of stress that doesn't go away, okay? So it's not just creating emotional problems, it's creating a real life, stressful, even threatening situation that is perceived to the lowest, smallest level of your biology. That's when stress is being directed into some organ where it actually influences how cells behave to the point that they can actually even mutate. Okay?
So a tool for that would be, for example, positive affirmation.
Well, it depends, because if you do positive affirmation without really resolving what's behind it, that's a fairy tale. You're not being realistic. You're not putting your feet on the ground. And that's even probably a trap that is very dangerous. It's very dangerous because you're living almost like a lie, okay? You need to become aware of what the problem is. Again, we go back to the root cause, which is the key principles addressing and from the physiology, the immune system, all that. You need to go to the root cause of what is the life situation that's causing you a problem, to think negatively, to feel negatively, to have emotions that are negative, okay? Once you're able to know and understand that, then you can step into expressing yourself emotionally properly, because if you're not spot on the emotions that you need to express, you may say 1,000, 1,000,000 words and not get to the words that are really important. This is like rocks that we carry. When we are able to put those proper words in an emotional, expressive way, you're gonna feel that burden just lift off you. Once you're lighter, you're going to have a much clearer perspective of what other possibilities you have to create a change in your life that actually allows you to live happy, joyful, and at peace. Once you're in that point, it's easy from there. You may have problems, you may have challenges, you may have other things, but you're going to have a much wider wisdom to resolve them, and without having to live under a state of inner conflict all the time.
So the practical aspect of the emotional, spiritual key principle is to look for these biological conflicts, let them go, and we could do this also in an active way, because this work is never really done. But in addition to that, prayer, meditation, positive affirmations, talking, letting it out, are very important components of all this. Obviously, with what you're saying, Dr. Curiel, that's more, work with a trained professional to really get to the root cause and allow yourself to let go of these biological conflicts. But just some things to remember here is that these 7 key principles, and I think we agree that the emotional spiritual is at the hallmark of the center of everything else in our healing journey. So, Lisa, thank you for being here with Dr. Curiel and myself. You've been so inspirational, not only to myself and our staff, but to other patients, for embracing what you learn at the clinic, and specifically for grabbing those 7 key principles and making them yours. And I couldn't thank you enough for that. So, and we see it in the results, and it takes more than just the 3 weeks at the clinic, right? The ongoing home program. So thank you so much for that. And Dr. Curiel, isn't it beautiful to be with Lisa here?
It is.
Someone who experienced what it is like.
Proud, feel proud of her.
Real. So thank you also for being here with us.
Thank you, Dr. Tony and Lisa.